I've always believed in fate. For most of my life, I thought it was just an idea people clung to when things didn't go their way. But after what happened at the lake, after everything that's unfolded since then, I know it's real. Some people call it luck, others call it karma, but I've come to understand it as a force beyond my control, one that has carried me here, to this isolated cabin overlooking a lake so dark and serene, it feels like the surface of another world. You might be wondering how someone like me could believe in something so abstract. After all, I've never exactly followed the rules of the universe, at least not the ones society holds dear. But if you were in my shoes, if you had experienced what I did, you'd understand. My name is Max, and I'm a painter now. It's a quiet life, peaceful even. The world doesn't ask much of me anymore. But that wasn't always the case. I wasn't always the man sitting in front of an easel, with nothing but the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore to keep me company. No, I used to be someone else. A hunter, a predator, a serial killer. I don't expect you to sympathize with me. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I don't care if you think I'm a monster or if you believe I deserve to rot in hell for what I've done. But you should understand one thing. I didn't become this way overnight. It was a process, a slow unraveling of my humanity that I hardly noticed until it was too late. By the time I realized what I was, there was no going back. For years, I moved through life unnoticed. I blended in, just like any other person in the city. I had a job, friends, relationships, but all the while I was hunting. The police called me the sculptor because of the way I left my victims, posed like works of art, their bodies contorted into unnatural shapes, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. It was my signature, my way of leaving a mark on the world. But even the best hunters make mistakes. And mine came one night, in a quiet neighborhood where I thought I'd be safe. I'd planned everything perfectly, or so I thought. But the police were waiting. Somehow they'd figured out where I'd be. They were closing in, their net tightening around me, and for the first time, I felt real fear. I ran. I didn't have a plan, just instinct, driving me deeper into the wilderness, away from the city, away from the places I knew. I don't know how long I ran or how far, but eventually I found myself here at the lake. The cabin was old, abandoned, but it was enough. It gave me shelter, a place to hide while the world searched for me. And as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I realized something strange. I was free, completely and utterly free. No one came looking for me. No one even seemed to know this place existed. It was like the world had forgotten me. That's when I started painting. It started as a way to pass the time. I had never painted before, never had the patience for it, but something about the lake called to me. The way the water shimmered under the moonlight, the way the mist rose from its surface in the early hours of the morning. It was like the lake was alive, like it was trying to communicate with me. I found some old paints and brushes in the cabin's cellar, left behind by whoever had lived here before. At first, my attempts were crude, sloppy, but the more I painted, the more I found myself drawn into it. The lake became my muse. I couldn't stop. Every day, I'd sit by the water's edge with my easel, trying to capture the way the light danced on the surface, the way the trees cast their long shadows over the shore. But no matter how many times I painted it, something always felt off. There was something missing, something just beyond my reach. It drove me mad, the way the lake refused to reveal its secrets to me. I would sit for hours, staring at the canvas, feeling like the answer was right there, just waiting for me to discover it. That's when the figures started appearing in my paintings. At first I didn't notice. They were small, barely noticeable, lurking in the background like shadows. But the more I painted, the clearer they became. Figures standing by the lake, their faces obscured, their bodies twisted and elongated like something out of a nightmare. I didn't understand what I was painting. I wasn't even conscious of adding them to the canvas. They just appeared, like they were being pulled from my mind without my knowledge. But there was something familiar about them, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. I tried to stop painting, but I couldn't. The lake had me in its grip and it wasn't letting go. It was late one night when I saw her for the first time. I had been sitting by the lake, watching the moonlight ripple across the water, when I noticed something strange. A figure, standing on the far side of the lake, half hidden by the trees. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the branches. But as I stared, the figure stepped forward, into the moonlight. It was a woman. She was tall, her body slender and graceful, her long, dark hair cascading down her back. She wore a simple white gown, the fabric fluttering in the breeze. But what struck me most was her face. She didn't have one. Where her eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, there was nothing but smooth, featureless skin. It was as if her face had been erased, wiped clean of any identity. My heart raced as I watched her. She stood there, perfectly still, staring at me, or at least I think she was staring. It was impossible to tell without her eyes, but I could feel her gaze on me, like a weight pressing down on my chest. And then, without a sound, she turned and walked back into the trees, disappearing into the darkness. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't get her image out of my mind. The faceless woman by the lake. I knew I had seen her before, but not in real life. No, I had painted her. She was one of the figures in my paintings, one of the shadows lurking by the water's edge. The next morning, I went back to my easel, determined to capture her on canvas. I spent hours working, my brush moving furiously across the canvas, the paint blending and swirling into shapes and forms. And when I stepped back to look at my work, there she was, the faceless woman, standing by the lake, her body half hidden in the mist. But something was different. This time she wasn't alone. There were more figures standing behind her, tall, thin, faceless men and women, their bodies contorted and twisted, their arms outstretched as if reaching for something just out of reach. And as I looked at them, I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew these figures. I knew them all. They were my victims. I didn't understand what was happening. How could this be? I had left that life behind, buried it deep in the past. But here they were, the people I had killed, standing by the lake, waiting for me. I tried to tell myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, that it was guilt manifesting itself in my art. But deep down, I knew the truth. The lake was showing me something. It was revealing the things I had tried to forget, the things I had thought I could escape. For days, I didn't leave the cabin. I couldn't bring myself to go back to the lake, to face the figures I had painted. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape them. They were everywhere. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, their faceless bodies looming over me, their hands reaching out, their mouths open in silent screams. I started hearing things too, whispers in the wind, voices calling my name. At first, they were faint, barely audible, but they grew louder with each passing day. They wanted something from me. They wanted me to come back to the lake. And so one night I did. The air was cold, the wind biting at my skin as I made my way down to the water's edge. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the lake, the water black and still. I could feel them watching me, the figures in the trees, their eyes, if they had eyes, locked on me as I approached. I didn't know why I had come. Maybe I thought I could end it, confront whatever was haunting me, and put it to rest. Or maybe I knew deep down that this was the end of the line for me. I stood by the water, staring out at the lake, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And then she appeared. The faceless woman stepped out from the shadows, her white gown glowing in the moonlight. She moved toward me, her steps slow and deliberate, her body gliding across the ground as if she wasn't walking at all. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, my body frozen as she came closer and closer. When she was just a few feet away, she stopped. We stood there, face to face, if you could call it that, her smooth, featureless skin reflecting the pale light of the moon. And then she spoke. Max. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper, but it cut through the night like a knife. I shuddered, my heart racing in my chest. You cannot escape us. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't. Her voice held me in place, her presence pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't bear. You belong to the lake now, she whispered, just as they do. I knew what she meant. The figures in my paintings, the people I had killed, they were here with her, trapped in the lake. And now so was I. She reached out, her hand hovering just inches from my face. I could feel the cold radiating from her, the air around her freezing as she drew closer. You must join us, she said. You cannot run from what you are. I wanted to deny it, to scream that I wasn't like them, that I was still alive, still human. But the truth was, I had never been more like them than I was in that moment. I was a killer, a monster, and now I was theirs. The last thing I remember is the water. cold, black water closing in around me as I sank deeper and deeper into the lake. The faceless woman watched from the shore, her blank expression never changing as I disappeared beneath the surface. I don't know how long I was down there. Time doesn't exist in the lake. There's only the darkness, the cold, and the weight of the water pressing down on you. But eventually I resurfaced. Now I stand by the lake, watching the moonlight ripple across the water, just as I used to. But I am no longer Max. I am no longer the man who hunted, who killed. I am something else now. I belong to the lake. And soon so will you.